You're listening to Michael Crosby, presidential candidate 2024. Giving an update here. Basically, there's a lot of things that people need to understand. The voters in California need to understand that major election rigging has in fact occurred. Now, to bring us up to date on this and a couple other key items I'm going to be covering over the course of the next 30 minutes or so. Now, we have a situation as current that deals with statistics. And the statistics are, and I think everybody's going to understand this immediately, is that the polls that have been being shown to people by the media are inaccurate. I think everybody understands this, that you can't have 98, 99% of the polls indicating supposedly that that 98, 99% of the vote is accounted for just two candidates. We have adults out there. We know that this is not the case. And the reality is beginning to manifest, where we're seeing some of the colleges, some of the universities, some of the other various independent people basically going out and getting independent statistics, finding out things like why these polls are not coming out the way that they would have in the past. I'm sure many people might have noticed that error factor. Do you remember they used to always show the polls and they'd always give you that error factor? What is the error factor? And people used to get like really mad at Fox News because it was like their error factor was like 7 to 14 points off. And people were like, oh, come on, don't be, But the thing is, there's actually some interesting reasons why some of the polling stopped, did things that it did. Now, part of the reason is we had the COVID. We have a whole lot of shopping malls that don't exist anymore. They're just empty buildings. There's a whole lot of these various mall-type situations, industrial, commercial properties that basically are empty. So they used to do polling at a lot of these places. Well, you can't because people are no longer gravitating to them. That ended. So even though you would say, yes, you still have a lot of malls and centers that were successful because some of them did survive. I mean, others just couldn't make a go of it where people gravitated around, and as these others started, going under, the other ones ended up finding ways to stay open or to reopen, and they got back a certain percentage of business. And these areas are, yes, being utilized. You got people running around showing that, in fact, they're doing polls. So, you got an iPad or some kind of pad, or they got a box or something sitting there. But granted, you also have another factor. People are getting disgusted. They would walk up, they'd see a polling machine, and they'd go, they have two candidates on this. What is this? This is, what an insult. What an insult. A lot of people are infuriated because they have other issues that they're interested in. They have a diversified set of interest. So when you have RFK basically getting together and putting a bunch of people out there to take polls, and all of a sudden, here's all this video footage. Here's all this undeniable evidence that there are people that, in fact, are saying, yeah, we're interested in we're interested in something else. And, yeah, we're looking at RFK, So obviously this would be to his interest to show that. But people are looking at other areas. You've got other candidates that were out there. You've seen a lot of protests. You've seen some Green Party protests. You've seen other people interested in different areas. The Libertarian Party still exists. You have new parties that have been recently coming into existence, and you basically haven't had much of the media showing these other parties. But these other parties in some ways are still active. They do get a little bit of money trickling in. They are doing what they can. And you have a lot of people looking at all these different issues. Now, some of these independent test polls to check for accuracy are using different methods. Methods to go after people more vigorously and say, hey, I noticed you walked away from a polling machine over there, or a person who was doing polling, and you looked frustrated. Like you threw your hands up or something. Can I please talk to you for just a moment? I want to find out how you feel. And they're like, some people don't want to talk about it. Other people are happy to say, okay, I'll tell you what I'm feeling. And then you hear it. They feel like maybe it says, I don't feel like that any issues that I'm really interested in are really being addressed. And that's what's pissing me off. And they're tired of it's a light switch. It's either left or it's this right. It's either up or down or it's whatever. And to them, they're like, the world is more complex than that. So you're getting more situations where people are doing things out there. Like, for instance, you can do snipe squads. You can send out a bunch of college students or whoever can get your hands on and say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put 2 people with the pad doing polling over in this one position. We're going to hide some cameras. And these people are going to, let's say, theoretically be polling and show somebody a pad. Is it up or is it the light switch? Is it blue or red? And then from a distance, you have other people that are going to be looking at this. You're going to be recording this with the cameras and stuff. And notice people that don't want to participate, or they give a strange look, or they throw up their hands. They look at it and they just throw up one hand, just turn around and walk away. Then they can approach these other people and say, hey, look, I happen to notice, these other people are doing their thing over there, but you know what? I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm trying to find out what people are really interested in. Could you please talk to me for a few moments? And this is when you're going to start finding people that will start talking, at least some of them, and you'll get some more accurate information. You're going to find out that the protest vote, we're having anomalies coming up to 40%. 40%. This means that the possibility at this moment that you have pockets, literally pockets in the country, where you have a rating that is 40% of people are pissed off, they're a protest vote, and they're currently not committed to vote for either red or blue. This is an enormous percentage. These are record-setting percentages. This is so far beyond the Ross Perot situation that we had years ago that it's almost mind-boggling. And normally as history would go, people would normally, the majority of them would gravitate back from protesting and finally say, oh, okay, I guess we're stuck. I'll have to vote for the A or the B. Or people would just say, oh, they're not going to vote. Well, it would seem that more people are kind of disgusted and they're thinking about really saying, yeah, I'm going to vote. I'm not going to vote the way that people might think I'm going to vote, but I'm going to vote. This is a protest vote, and it's massive. It is massive. These are people who want to send a signal saying, we have issues that are not being addressed, and we want these issues addressed. So we're looking at a really big situation with what can happen. It can turn into forms of explosiveness. Now, into this, we also have the complexities of which regions of the country are more important. How is this going to work? Because you have what people call, obviously, the battleground states. Because some states, either blue or red, has so many extra points that it's almost pointless to try to change people's minds. But then there's the battleground states where people are saying, hey, it's kind of up in the air. Well, guess what? That's not exactly correct either. And I want to talk more about that and explain why this is. Because there are other things that are happening in the country that basically the media is not reporting on yet. You're seeing stuff in social media that, well, it's incredibly confusing. There's massive quantities of material that are incredibly confusing. You got who knows what's true, and we all know that there's a whole lot of people, they're just running out on the super comedian, let's just keep banging all these people in the ground like there's some kind of twig or peg or whatever. But there's a lot more seriousness that is basically happening. Let me explain some of this. We have law. When you start to talk about law could get interesting. Even though we have this huge problem with collapses in the justice system, the law factor is way different. And you have all of these other factors that need to be understood more. And for instance, you have archive charges against Trump, Biden, and there are other archive charges. There are attacks upon archives. These are different styles of charges. Violent attacks upon archives are very serious. In other words, it's not the same thing like, oh yeah, you went to the library and you didn't bring the book back, or yeah, you had, important books, classified information, and you didn't bring it back, or you didn't handle it right, or it got destroyed, or we're not sure why you have these sensitive documents in the same building or the same room where you have foreign people that shouldn't be anywhere near these certain documents. And these are things I've just mentioned. These are coming out of the media. They've been out in the media on and off. People that pay attention would understand some of this and say, yeah, there's a problem. But when it comes to attack upon archives and attack upon other candidates, the media has not been covering very much information. When it comes to my campaign, for more than a year and a half, I've been showing people incredibly vivid evidence. Here are images of vehicles that have come under attack. Look at the damage on these things. Look at these RVs that are getting attacked. Look at the cars. Look at the logistics vehicles, the tool trucks, everything getting attacked. And then I talk about how many different locations there are, and the fact that, by the way, these were not necessarily registered items from the standpoint they were not traceable. In other words, these were not something that would be in a public database that somebody could get a hold of and find where these vehicles were at and what names they were in. In fact, some of these vehicles were in between being registered as to which state they were going to be registered out of. Some of them were new acquisitions. They were fully running vehicles ready to go that were simply parked in secure storages. So this is part of the problem. When you talk about secure storage situation and you have basically mobile broadcast RV units that are also archives that come under attack, these are very serious charges. The Constitution places very serious penalties on people who attack archives. And this is whether they're a building, they're a wagon, or whatever they are. If you attack an archive wagon, you can get the death penalty. And a lot of people don't understand this. And these things did occur. You had people that basically were executed during the 60-year wars because they attacked archive wagons. And this is something it's almost unheard of to find people pulling stuff out of history and saying, yeah, here we go. Because when you try to look back that far in history, you're running into so many areas where documents are missing. You can even go look at congressional documents and look at all these sections in these certain years, and you can tell there's documents missing. And every so often you'll find a mentioning, yeah, documents are missing, or recreated documents. We believe that these are what the documents would have been, but the originals were stolen, or the originals were moved by the military or put into a different type of storage situation, and we basically retyped these out. This is what the document is, but it is not the original document. But this is supposedly what it says. So there's all this stuff about all this material that's archived in history and all these other things that are missing. The British came in, they burned down Washington. They burned a city. And that's not the only city that burned. The British burned a lot of other things. It was war. There were things that happened. People look upon, oh, there's only this one engagement. No, that's the one large engagement they talk about. But there were other factors. There were people who were loyal to the British. There were people that were hired by the British. You had espionage attack teams that penetrated deep into areas and burned structures to the ground. Why? Because they wanted to destroy the documents. So the strictest laws that we have involving archives, in other words, museums, artifacts, archives, archivers, you don't attack these. If you attack these, it's basically the death penalty. It's not a game. It's not a joke. It's completely different than saying, oh, yeah, you guys had some sensitive books and you didn't bring them back on time. And, oh, yeah, we had other copies of it. No, we're talking about different areas. The intent of a violent attack on an archive is completely different. Completely different. Again, we're looking at areas where the death penalty, when you get to the penalty phase, is up on the table and very seriously considered. And in fact, the problem is, you read the Constitution, the articles, it's mandatory. So keep this in mind, that we have something happening that we haven't actually seen. And what we have seen that changes the whole ball game is January 6th insurrection. It's undeniable that there was this mass violence on January 6th. There's just too much footage on it. And the investigation determines that basically, yeah, this is definitely a form of insurrection. This is some major rebellion. So as people are dealing with their so-called opinions on it, pretty much anybody that's the learned, that has done intensive investigation and looking at lots of evidence, comes to the conclusion that, yes, this was a very serious situation. It is an insurrection. So here's the key. See, here's kind of the twist to this. The twist is there were other violent acts of insurrection in other areas of the country, and the media has not been reporting them on the whole. Now, there are some brave reporters that have reported that there are some anomalies, and you'll have reporters, I believe there's a couple of them, as I recall, they came up with numbers and they updated them several times, and it's like, yeah, there's like 87 different power plants or 140 power plants that have come under violent attack. That's mind-boggling. Those kind of statistics are mind-boggling. So if maybe you caught one of those Rachel Maddow shows, and she says, yeah, there's 23, and then it was like 40 something. I mean, there's these updates that come out, and they're being kind of brave and saying maybe people shouldn't be cowardly, and maybe they should pay attention to some of these other facts that are out there. There's sometimes ways to find out individual listings. But the copycat factor is the big paranoia. Many items have not been reported in the media because of what's known as the copycat factor. Hopefully you know what that means, but in short, they don't want people to hear it because then they might decide to go out and do it. The copycat factor. So into this, things are far different than what people think they are. And the investigations and convictions involving the January 6th situation, you've got sites that have maps that show you the networking, the different types of organizations that were involved or still involved, and demographically, where people's origin, where they came from. And you look at this stuff and you're going, my goodness, you've got over 100 people came from Florida, and there's like 100 people out of New York, and California's like way up there right now. I think it's just about to turn the point where there's almost 100 out of California. And the interesting thing is that you're also got different factors. We're talking about how many of these people had military experience, how many were actively serving. How many of them were police officers? How many of them were active agents, FBI agents, so forth, etc.? So it's not funny when you end up with statistics and you go, wow, California apparently had 87 police officers or agents that were convicted, that were involved in the J6 attacks. And when you look at the areas, the vast majority of them came from south of San Francisco. So it's very important to understand these various factors. Now, into this, there are other facts. There are other crimes that have occurred, and other leaders are involved. This is where we're going to go for a ride, people. We're getting ready to go for a ride. Now, some of you got a little idea of what's going on because you've been keeping pace at least with some of my material. You've seen those fantastic images that are so blatantly obvious. You know, my goodness, look at the violence. You know, wow, look at this. Look at all the windows now. Look at the violence. You know, computers destroyed, computers stolen, material pertaining to the process of elections, material pertaining to national security, archival material, historic documents, historic books, artifacts, very rare artifacts. The list goes on and on. So this is something that's very important to understand when I jump back and say, by the way, there's a problem with who would have a short list of where all of these different secure locations were at. And when you have surgical statistical add-ups and you have all these different locations that were hit, you have to ask, where did somebody get the intelligence? Where did the list come from? How was this targeted? How is it that this many particular items were targeted? And this is a big one. It's a big one because now you're talking about special government files. Special government records. You're not talking about police records. You're talking about very high up specialized records. Specialized Justice Department records, specialized Department of Defense records, specialized, well, basically executive branch type stuff. And you have state level executive branch type stuff. So now we run into this various problems, and I think people already understand that everything seems to be breached anymore. It's a big breach city. It's over with. I've talked about that before. I don't want to go into it right now because I've gone extensively into it in other items, other pod speeches. So it's understandable here to talk about the aspects here that obviously we have seen breaches that go all the way up to the Superior Court. So the courts, yeah, boom, breach city. They're all breached. So for those of you that didn't know this stuff, you know, you need to practically break out. I mean, it's serious. You know, you don't have notes, start taking notes. Yeah, you need about 1,500 sheets of paper to start your notes up, and I'm not joking. I am not joking. If you want to keep track with some of the stuff I'm laying out, you're going to need a lot of paper and a lot of pens. This is no joke. Because here, we're just about ready to go for a brand new big ride. So here we go. Now, real quick, many of you might have noticed that I've got it right on the Twitter. I talk about shielded documents. That's important because there are different reasons in law why you have to have shielded documents. And some of them are for my safety. And some of them are for other people's safety. And some of them deal with, we don't want to front off the situation that certain other people might understand that we've discovered they're involved in a RICO situation. We're on to them. Because these people are potentially dangerous. And this means more complications, more security, more measures that have to be dealt with. So not all the information can come out at once. And some things have to be held for certain styles, certain types of processing. Keep in mind there are many levels of processing that people don't understand. Processing documents before the United States Congress and the Senate is a bit different than just going to a normal court. Declaring a presidential candidate panel on treason is a constitutional right that some people don't understand. There's a lot of complexities to it and an enormous responsibility. It's just one of those things. It's hard to emphasize the importance of the constitutional mindset and the reasons that power is put there by the forefathers. And when somebody's activating something, you have a long set of obligations, even though you deal with the sliding scale situation of invasion, insurrection, mass rebellion, etc., foreign and domestic intrusions, all that stuff. So the obligation is that an assessment has to track what the scalability factors could be. In other words, how much danger, how many violent attacks, can you operate funded and with full panel people? Can you go through certain types of procedures, or are you under heavy fire and you're constantly being dislodged from locations because bullets are coming at you and maybe fire bombs and they're burning stuff up, and who knows, maybe bombs, whatever it is. These have to be weighed and considered. Obviously, a more peaceful time is the more ideal environment, and utilizing the right tools to get things done right. And I don't want to talk about the FMRI lie detectors a whole lot right now because I already covered that. I've covered that a lot, and I don't want to bore people, but I did cover it. So this having been said, we can go into the roller coaster. Part of the roller coaster deals with a prior election. In prior elections, there were other things that have happened, and it's crucially important to understand what happened and whom was involved, because elections affect other elections. And when you look at J6, for most people, it is blatantly clear this is not something that just accidentally happened. Oops, no. This is part of a long-term evolution cycle. This required a lot of people's participation repeatedly to bring things like this, and I'm pretty sure you're going to find a lot of people that would agree with that. So moving forward, the importance is when we have an election, there was a recall election in California to recall Governor Newsom. Now, this election was occurring just before the election, the Biden and Trump situation. And this is very important to understand because there was already insurrection activity occurring. There are already other people that are victims, were victims, are victims, by the way, yet to become victims. Now, there have been certain changes because the justice system has processed a lot of people, and that's freeing up some of their justice agents. I don't want to go into how many people basically had their cases that normally would have got processed rejected because all of a sudden the justice system was bogged down beyond normal estimations, way beyond that. But we step back, there we have this earlier election, this recall election in California. Now, I was a candidate running for governor. The problem is I was coming under attacks from various parties in various different ways. Now, even though Congress ordered money because of the COVID situation, we had the stay-at-home, the ordered shutdown situation. But Congress ordered everybody to be compensated. Now, I want you to keep in mind there are certain laws that apply. There are certain constitutional items that are crucial. They are crucial to understand. And this goes back into the understanding of the word archiver. Archive. artifacts, national security, technology, research, rare books, artifacts, etc. All this stuff comes into play because what ended up happening is now we know beyond the shadow of a doubt because the Secret Service investigated and the U.S. Senate reviewed part of it. Julie Su somehow was fired in California, and I know a lot about that. And I've talked about it before again, and she got hired by the Biden administration. So at her review hearing, she doesn't make the review says, no, you're not going to be there. Now, different people supplied evidence or made comments or tried to supply evidence or encouraged various other types of investigations, so forth, etc. I'm one of those people. I fit in there. Now, the U.S. Secret Service says there's $31 billion fraud, gone, boom. And we're not exactly sure, but pretty much we think like 28 billion or more went outside the country. So in a nutshell, Julie Su shut down effective, proper, rounded communications. She programmed a bunch of computers to blacklist people. She got a hold of a list of certain types of people and certain types of phone numbers, and she used that list to arrange the programming of the responses that would occur respective to the system. So effectively, she blacklisted people. When people asked, how is that distribution of congressional money going? She says, oh, it's wonderful. If you can imagine this. Yes, it's happening. We're handing all this money out. We're really getting money to where it needs to go. Oops, that's not what happened. What happened is people who called in. I've covered this before extensively, and I got 300 hours of recordings on live action phones and live action computer grabs of how the computers weren't working at the EDD substations and whatnot. So again, some of that is shielded evidence. Because of certain types of procedures, I cannot show those publicly because of rules of the shield. And some people don't understand this. These are RICO investigations. This is serious crime, organized crime. We're talking about people that basically would call in and say that they were not a citizen and they want money. And they could apparently call in from anywhere. So here, a system that is programmed to blacklist citizens who are entitled to get money was apparently giving money to people who weren't even in the country, calling from phones that had oddball area codes. So the justification is unaccepted as far as I'm concerned, saying that, somebody might have been visiting here with a foreign phone. We've gone way beyond that. We have no idea who many of these people are and how many billions of dollars went to, we don't know who they are or where they are. We just know that they used the system, they got the money, they picked up the money, they extracted the money, and they're gone. Now, some people figured it out. They got caught committing fraud. And most of the people that were inside U.S. borders that figured it out and did the scam, a lot of them got busted. But a lot of people never did get busted and are nothing but a dead end. Supposedly. I could talk about the technology that sorts that, but those are other more serious discussions to explain how that works. So with my situation involving the gubernatorial election, I was being blacklisted using three phones at the same time. We're talking day after day, week after week, month after month, trying to get through. And you had these different things. Oh, we're out of money for another 3 weeks, or this. We got to wait for shipment, da-da-da-da-da. And then running into people saying, no, we're only authorized to give money to foreign citizens. We're only authorized to give money to who are not U.S. citizens. You're a U.S. citizen. We have, $500 million available for people that are not citizens. But you're a citizen. We don't have a dime in that fund for you yet. So all these various excuses just don't work. There's something called continuity of elections and continuity of government. And I'm sure some of you are feeling where this is getting ready to go, and some of you are probably maybe getting upset. You need to sit down. You need to understand things about the truth. And you need to grab a hold of yourself. And you need to get all those oddball emotions that you might have, that might be influencing your decision, and you need to set those aside. So whether you're drinking tea or punch or whatever, push it off to the side, because this is when the truth comes in. So when I communicate with the Secretary of State of California, Shirley Weber, and say I need action this day, when I send communications, when I talk to other people in the offices, when I fill out various other types of information, there's a problem. There's a really big problem. The problem is I periodically would do petitions. And being a gig worker, doing petitions, being part of the process of elections, just at that level, means that I was entitled to be paid, because propagation, places where people would propagate, where you would get signatures, were banned from allowance of activity. So basically, in a nutshell, I was owed very quickly about $90,000. And this did not cover understanding other people that I would have been basically, working with, managing, so to speak. So here we have a situation where I'm being blacklisted by Julie Sue. I can't get through. She's got all communications blocked. She's violating continuity of elections. She's violating continuity of government. She has screwed up with her communications. She has decided to select a specific style and group of people, and that's all she's going to communicate with, and everybody else was blacklisted and blocked. Blocking people is blacklisting. So when I'm communicating to Shirley Weber, to the Secretary of State of California, and saying, look, the state owes me like $90,000. This happened many times. The state owes me $30,000. Now it's $40,000. Now it's $60,000. Yada yada yada. So when I say, look, I'm a reoccurring intermittent candidate, and I didn't have to reveal to them everything about everything. You just don't do that at the time. So the fleet, the archive fleet, was not necessarily part of the discussion. What was part of the discussion was the information proving 100% beyond the shadow of a doubt that I helped circulate petitions to get items on the ballot, have my signature repeatedly all over documents that are located where? With the Secretary of State of California, because they're the ones that track this stuff. So when I'm saying that I'm being blacklisted and these people are not paying me, or saying these people are refusing to pay me, I don't have to use the word blacklist at this time. That's kind of a given, so to speak. I'm saying, yeah, these people refuse to pay me. You have the evidence. You can do an inter-department phone call, and in 5 minutes, have somebody at a different area of the building on a database immediately live as you're on the phone checking and saying, yes, we have found Mr. Crosby's name. Yes, he's on a lot of documents and they've some been digitized or whatever. Yes, yes, yes. So the next step is, that's the 100% verification that I qualified and did what I did. The next step is for their department to go say, look, we've got a candidate, okay? They need their money. Everything is ordered shut down. It's stay at home. Their businesses, their nonprofit activities, all this other stuff have been ordered shut down. So you've got this array of understanding. There's these different little problems and big major problems with all of this. And they deal with, various items. And number one is this person is owed money by the government. That certain people in government don't want to pay them that supposedly were supposed to be handling the payout. People that got fired, Julie Sue. You've got other people. Apparently, the investigation said there was only 4 fraud investigators for the entire EDD operation, for all those billions and billions of dollars that went out. And when you get through to one of them on the phone and you say, look, I'm a candidate, I have to be paid. And they're like, I don't give a flying F. Okay, now we're talking about more people that are going to get arrested, more people that are going to go to prison because they violated their constitutional oath. This is not a game. I keep trying to explain to people, this is not a game. Now, into this, so far, I'm just focusing on one little area, the petitioning. Petitioning and the right to be paid for the petitioning, but I'm also an archiver. I also deal with national security. I kind of mentioned this earlier in the discussion. So there's a whole lot on the table. So the Secretary of State's office does not want to do their job. They don't want to investigate when I say, hi, how you doing? I'm a candidate. My income has come under attack. It's been ordered shut down by an act of man. That's a man-made disaster. The law says automatically that whoever creates that man-made disaster is automatically responsible. That means the state is responsible. The state owes me money. By the way, it's very important to understand this. I have to be paid. Why? Because you cannot attack a candidate. You cannot attack a candidate's income. That is deemed an act of war. You cannot attack an archiver's income. You cannot, the list, let me spare you the list that goes on. These are very serious crimes. This is not a game. So when I'm sitting there as nice as possible saying, I have to be paid, I need my pay, I need you people to override and say, hey, you got to pay this guy. Why? Let me simplify this for you. This man's a candidate. If you don't pay him the money that was ordered by Congress to be paid out to everybody, which includes him, we have to send people down there to arrest you for interfering with the process of elections and attacking a candidate. It's considered an act of war, according to the Constitution and the Articles. There is no escape from that definition. None whatsoever. I'll spare you the longer list of all the insanely serious federal charges that go right along with this. And we have people that refuse to do their job. We have Weber's refusing to do her job. That means that she is actively aiding and abetting, covering up crimes for Julie Sue. Actively aiding and abetting in attack upon a candidate's income. That is an act of war. Determined by the Constitution and the Articles. That's one of the ultimate no-nos. You can't do that. Now, I'm going to spare you a lot of this, and let me nutshell part of this. There's all these other areas of the way this works. But essentially, I'm saying, hey, look, the state owes me money. I need money to get on the ballot because we got COVID, and I can't go around and get enough signatures because we've got to stay at home, and the propagation limitation situation. So you have to pay me this money on this level, no matter what. It's ordered by Congress. The money's been delivered. I've been counted. The state has already collected from the estimations and the other paperwork. Keep in mind, when people fill out paperwork, copies of that paperwork are forwarded to other areas of government. They use it to justify how much money they're going to need and collect, which means that the state of California already, from my initial claims that I'd filled out before and sent in by fax, we won't talk about the faxes getting shut down and how that blacklisting area went, and the testimony from other people that are talking about what went down there. We're going to save that for another time. Now, bottom line, the state of California used records that I filled out to collect the money. So that money was sitting in accounts all the time. That 30, 40, 60, 90 grand sitting in accounts all the time. Now, by the way, there's other areas where pay had to occur. That gets more complicated. That's more complicated documents. I don't want to go into that right now, but there was a logistic problem processing all those documents, a logistic complication, and I'll explain that at another time. It's a huge valid area. So bottom line is, straight to the attention, repeatedly brought to the attention of the Secretary of State's office and directly to Shirley Weber, is that I'm a candidate, I'm declaring, and I've already pleaded. By the way, I'm pre-declared. I was a pre-declared candidate. This is really interesting how this works, because there are recordings of me pre-declaring ahead of time, setting my schedule, that are actually years in advance, recorded in history for all time. For all time. Why? Because I'm an archiver. That's how some of this stuff works. So I'm a pre-declared candidate, so I'm a declared candidate. There's no way out of that for these people. So they flatly refuse to do their job. So you got a minimum of dereliction of duty, but the reality is they are intentionally direct participants. Why? They're aiding and abetting people. I'm not gonna help people split hairs and let them make excuses. There are no excuses. There are no excuses. Congress ordered the money to be paid. These parties participated in items identified as acts of war against a candidate to destroy their income. That is never allowed. That is not allowed under any circumstances constitutionally. You can jump up and down and talk all you want about this temporary order. It doesn't matter. It's not allowed. Now, if somebody says, oh, well, let's pay them, and then there's a fair compensation, then you're inventing an after-the-fact excuse. It's still not allowed. That is partially acceptable, that some people might think. But you can't pull the rug out and say, ha, 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 we deceived you, we screwed you, we changed the game around, and we're cutting you out of the picture, and we're pushing our own people into the picture. That's treason. I'm not going to help go into the 400 different versions of charges of how many ways these people violated the law, and there's no way out for them. But Shirley Weber violated her oath to the Constitution. The federal Constitution, the state Constitution. She violated all of these things. She aided and abetted, which makes her a direct participant in committing acts of war against a candidate. Now, here's the interesting part. Now, utilizing of the first 14 guaranteed, verified, ready-to-go RVs, 12 of them would have been instantly available to start up by simply turning the key. maybe a quick battery charge, whatever. You just turn the key, it's ready to go. Now, painting letters on the side of these vehicles that simply said Michael Crosby for governor, and here's a website number. Very easy. Very, very easy to do. And, this is one of those things you can just go out and have them printed out from a printout. Just slap them suckers right on. The statistical understanding utilizing some of the largest computers in the world, figuring out the psychological tendencies and the understanding of the way the processes of elections work, came up with an absolute minimum statistic. The minimum statistic is that even though it was a recall election, even though it would seem the polls clearly would indicate that Newsom was not going to be recalled, the specialized category that in the event he was recalled had actual gubernatorial candidates to be selected. I was supposed to be listed on the ballot as a candidate, and they blocked me. And they had no right to block me. They had no right to block people whatsoever. None. Zero. Now, the interesting thing about this is that what's really important about this is that I was, again, a dual candidate, dual declared candidate. I said that, I'll be running for governor and then I'll be running for president. And then, back and forth. This is my plan. This is my schedule. This is what I'm going to be doing. Now, the minimum statistic came out is that a 12 RVs essentially would have had me basically having these vehicles driving on and off the clover leaves of our wonderfully huge freeway system. Hello Los Angeles, hello San Francisco, hello San Diego, hello, Orange County, hello all these places. You're talking about an exposure rate of 12 RVs basically having 1 million people a day seeing my name, seeing the website. And with my name on the ballot, this equated out to a minimum factor of no less than 22% of the vote. It was like a free election for me for exposure, to have people get to know me, and to try out some of the newest features that I had incorporated into the fleet, to bring them out, to get that convoy out there running, to do Wi-Fi. I had 5,000 and 10,000 foot range Wi-Fi to try, and I had parts to be able to extend that. That fleet basically could have covered the entire area of the LA Coliseum. You're talking about more than 100 square miles of territory. Bringing Wi-Fi, the most advanced concepts and developmental issues in the history of the world. The history of the world. The most advanced scenario situation, the most advanced solutions in the history of the world were blocked because of these people's activity. Why is that? There are deep, dark things about the investigation that go lots of places. They touch base with the Russia investigation. They touch base with Robert Mueller. They touch base with many other areas. They touch base with the Israeli Mossad. Now, I've talked about some of these other factors in other pod speeches, shows, whatever. Bottom line is, it's impossible to sidestep the factors that Julie Su committed acts of war against a candidate. Actually, two-time candidate, selection type. But it's impossible. And there's an array of charges that she also did. Shirley Weber also is an active participant who had a choice, who went into dereliction, who covered up things, who refused to check simple records availability when it was her office. When it was her office, it was safeguarding, archiving that exact information, refusing to do her job, refusing to protect the process of elections, refusing to protect candidate rights, refusing to protect the Constitution. List goes on and on and on. So at this point in time, what we have from a legal standpoint is that we have, I'm just going to tell you, we have 4 people, high-ranking, connected to California, that are going to be going to prison. According to the analysis on the computers of the evidence and the various parties' actions, multiple overlapping legal determinations basically used with some of the largest computers in the world, using legal analysis software, states that these people are going to be going to prison. And there are so many overlapping charges, you're getting to the point where you're beyond the 100% verification category. This means that Julie Su is going to be going to prison. Julie Su is connected to the Biden-Harris campaign. Shirley Weber, state of California, is said to be Democrat, and I'm not sure how all the sports goes. I believe she publicly endorsed certain candidates. This does the Camp Cross Association. Basically, at this point in time, I'm disclosing to the voters because you got screwed. If you're a California voter, or even any voter in the United States, you got screwed. Because I can tell you other things about the computer analysis of what was going to happen and how the best developed plan in the history of the world, was unfolding, but kept coming under attack. Why? These are really interesting. We have a long, long way to go explaining who did what when. And I'm telling you, this is one of the reasons that FMRI lie detector technology with serious pharmaceutical assistance is going to come into play very interesting, in a very interesting manner. So beyond the shadow of a doubt, Shirley Weber, members of the state, have participated in attacks upon a gubernatorial and a presidential candidate. So the problem at this point in time is, let me nutshell this for you, without going through all the 400 or 4,000 ways that the charges cross-connect with the various parties. They have disqualified California's right to have delegates go to Washington and be counted and certified. I have filed various other documents through the United States Archive, through the Secretary of the Senate. For all intents and purposes, you need to understand, I have frozen all the California delegates. This means that the declaration for specialized emergency elections is pretty much going to be about the only way to resolve a lot of this. This means that there's another point that deals with attacks upon a candidate, attacks upon elections, that state that all these matters and these people need to be prosecuted before the counting and certification is allowed to proceed forward. It's the law. This means I have to be compensated. Well, because these people repeatedly kept refusing to do their duty, we had more and more violence coming. We had more and more problems. I needed to get the convoy. I needed to get the fleet out of harm's way. And these people stranded me. What they did is unforgivable. It's unconscionable that people with superior knowledge could participate in such things. There's no escape for these people. They have screwed the voters. They've disenfranchised the voters. They have interfered with the process of elections. The computers estimated on dealing with the psychological interpretation. This is based upon Well, you, the people, voters, interpreting the various plans that I have, whether you perceive them, whether they're absorbed in your head to understand the mathematical logic of them and how they work and how solid they are, that there's a variant understanding on the vote. I could have gotten up to 38% of the vote in California running for governor. Now, how this works is going into the presidential election. See, I'm missioning this part. We've got to this certain other part, and you understand I have seized all the California delegates. They haven't been chosen yet. They're already seized. We blatantly busted a rigged election. It's over with. These people are busted. So the statistical analysis would indicate that my standard fleet basically should have had me entering. And in other words, if I had been paid what I was owed to begin with, it would have been 14 RVs hitting the road. Now, I'm going to tell you about another situation I held up because of shielding. It deals with some other violent activity, some other illegal activity that was investigated by the state of Arkansas concerning bad cops, other bad players. Now, we've already recognized it beyond the shadow of the doubt that I just laid this on the table, and it should be a no-brainer to you that Julie Sue's gone, Shirley Weber's gone, and they violated some very serious stuff and basically disqualified other head-in candidates. They're over with. They're done based on that alone. But there's more. There's additional evidence that deals with false arrest, entrapment, illegal impounds, activity investigated by the IRS and the state of Arkansas that are found in my findings. And we also have the computer doing the analysis of the arguments and claims that analyze that what is written on the tickets and these citations are not logical. That other clear data indicates that that stuff is completely erroneous. And even though that information was repeatedly brought to the attention of various people, they refused to act rationally. They refused to do the right thing. They refused to prosecute the police officers, even though we were demanding, saying, there is positively no way out. We do not forgive police officers who attack archivers, who attack candidates. We prosecute them. They were looking at a minimum of 70 years each. Now, the situation would seem that Harris's various travelings and offices did come in the realm of scope, so to speak. And they refused to prosecute the police officers. They refused to rectify the situation. They refused to pay financial compensation. They refused to participate. They gave excuses that are ridiculous, stating things such as, oh, well, we have to defend our employees. I says, no, your duty is to the citizens of the state and the Constitution and to protect candidates and the process of elections, not to abandon everybody else in lieu of somebody who might even be a Russian spy. We don't know. Whatever. And you're going to say you've refused to investigate. Therefore, you're making a conscious decision right now, saying that you are deliberately going to delay investigations involving matters that are also connected to national security. Do you understand you just committed a felony? Do you understand it? You just violated your constitutional oath. You're recorded on tape. I demand those tapes. These people are screwed. Harris, I have no idea why people would want to vote for Harris. What are you doing? You, the people, what are you doing? She's over with. She's gone. there's too many charges. She's not allowed. She's a direct participant in attacking another candidate. She's disqualified. Acts of war against a candidate. Mass dereliction of duty. Violation of oaths. Why is the Democratic Party wasting their time to perpetuate BS? You need to accept this. The apology situation to me needs to begin. The $2.8 billion in compensation because of the enormous damage that spiraled out of control that happened to the archive needs to take hold, because the law is the processing has to occur before the delegates are allowed to be counted or certified. That means I have to be put on the ballots. I have to be compensated. I have to run an emergency election sequence. I have to conduct incredible repairs involving decades of custom AI design work, custom solutions. We're talking crimes against humanity for what these people have done. There's no excuse. Why Democrats are going to perpetuate to not inspect evidence, to not understand what these people did, is lunacy. This is not rational communications from you people, the voters, or you people, the leaders, who are continuously booking leaders that are irrational. And anybody that takes any method of delay to speak a word against the items falls under special categories of the Constitution for directly attacking the Constitution of integrity of the United States. It is impossible for Harris or the delegates of California to get by me when I'm in front of Congress. It's over with. The entire campaign that you people are proposing is over with. Please don't be stupid. Don't certify this person to proceed forward anymore. It's pointless. It's over with. Rational thinking, rational communication needs to proceed forward from Democrats, and I expect apologies. Those are owed to me. And that's only the beginning process before we can discuss the possibility of any forgiveness. As for you people that are voters, that are listening to this going, well, this stuff's kind of interesting. What happened? Wait a minute, I think we got robbed. Did we get robbed? Yeah, I think somebody burned us. Yes, get pissed off, get on the phone, start screaming at your leaders, start screaming at your Congress people, start screaming at everybody, Secretary of State, everybody's office, and let's get this situation underway, because nobody can beat me. AI has stated it. Every category imaginable, AI says I have the best plan in the history of the world. I am the candidate. And I will have my convoy, my fleet repaired. And this is going to happen before we can proceed forward with the process of elections. Me? Well, I got people shooting at me from time to time. I'm not exactly having a good time. And you know what? I don't even know which people are shooting at me for sure. I don't know if they're Democrats or Republicans. We still got to figure all of that out. So for those of you who probably might be innocent that are hearing this, that have this huge headache and are trying to figure out what's going on, like maybe Al Franken, maybe he'll finally start listening to my stuff and understand what's going on. He's supposed to have a legal mind, so he can get down off that horse and step away from the please, I'm asking all you people, step away from the criminals. Please, just step away from all the criminals, please. But for those of you who might be innocent, I want to thank you very much for your time. My name is Michael Crosby, and yes, I am a POTUS candidate for 2024.